Dear friends, this is Dr. N. Adhavan from HHD Rajas College, Pudukottai. In my earlier videos, we dealt with some interesting problems of quantum mechanics without discussing about the fundamentals of quantum mechanics. So, it is a right as well as a proper thing to discuss the fundamentals along with the historical development of quantum mechanics. The title of this video is Quantum Mechanics. This quantum mechanics is supposed to be a new philosophy of nature. It tries to see the world around us in a different sense. More importantly, in dealing with the things which are not easily visible to the human naked eye in a conceptual way. It is not developed overnight. Lot of hard work of many physicists was behind its development. Literally speaking, the word quantum means the quantity of physical measurement in terms of numbers, and mechanics is the study of motion of physical objects in terms of physical quantities. The restrictions on the allowed values of such physical quantities are central in quantum mechanics. In order to answer the question why we need quantum mechanics it is customary to know the failure of the mechanics in use at the time of birth of quantum mechanics. To start with, let us see in detail the frameworks of classical mechanics. Though the term classical was prefixed after the birth of new mechanics, we use the term classical mechanics as it is popular to us. There are three popular frameworks of classical mechanics, namely the Newtonian formalism, Lagrangian formalism, and the Hamiltonian formalism, out of which Newton formalism is very old, but it is a vigorous one. It was built upon the principle of calculus proposed by Newton himself. There is a set of three laws which governs the entire dynamics of the system concerned. Moreover, it is a force-centric formalism. Since the force is a vector quantity, we need to solve 3n equations for n particles to understand the entire dynamics of all the n particles. In addition, we have to consider 6n initial conditions to solve the 3n equations. More the number of particles, more is the number of equations to be solved. Newton's framework is supposed to deal with the Cartesian system of coordinates. Newton's formalism did not take the constraints of the motion seriously. On the other hand, by putting forth the argument that the reduction in the number of equations to be solved can be made by considering the equations of constraints also. Precisely, if we have n particles and k equations of constraints, then in principle one need to solve only 3n minus k equations instead of 3n equations. Or in other words, the system possesses 3n minus k degrees of freedom. The coordinates of these 3n minus k degrees of freedom is termed as generalized coordinates, and the respective velocities or momenta are termed as generalized velocities or generalized momenta. Lagrange derived an equation of motion from the principle of virtual work, or otherwise called D'Alembert's principle. He defined a new quantity L named after him, which is nothing but the difference between the kinetic and potential energies. That is, one can write the quantity L as T minus V. Therefore, for velocity independent potentials, one can write the Lagrange equation of motion as d by dt of dou L by dou Q dot minus dou L by dou Q is equal to 0. The special feature of the Lagrangian formulation is that it is energy centric. The quantity L seems to have no physical significance. a slightly different formulation was taken up by Hamilton, and he defined a new quantity h, which is nothing but the total energy of the system, and derived Hamilton's equations of motion, which are two first order differential equations. Comparatively, first order differential equations are easy to deal with. Moreover, in this formulation, the quantities position and velocity play equal role in the system's underlying dynamics. Having seen the three famous formalisms of classical mechanics, we ask the following questions. Is that all? Did these formalisms address all the problems or issues of physics satisfactorily? Are these formalisms system independent? Do these formalisms work on all scales? These are the questions which have to be answered. To answer these questions, a relook on the history of events that took place during the 19th century is inevitable. The journey of classical mechanics was very smooth up to a certain period of time. When the following things happened, it was not so. They are the discovery of cathode rays by Michael Faraday in 1838, followed by the Winter statement of the blackbody radiation problem by Gustav Kirchhoff in the year 1859, and in the year 1877, a suggestion by Ludwig Boltzmann based on his statistical thermodynamical theories that the energy states of a physical system could be discrete. Finally, the discovery of the photoelectric effect by Heinrich Hertz in 1887. All the above incidents or events were considered to be serious threats to the concepts of classical physics. So, what was the outcome? The outcome was there were troubles which waved out the inability, or in other words, the inadequacy of classical physics was finally exposed in the following sense. Predominantly, there were two experimental results which could not be explained satisfactorily by the classical mechanics. They belong to the energy distribution in a black body and the photoelectric effect. If we carefully probe the results, we can understand the following. According to classical theory, the energy distribution due to a black body is proportional to the square of the frequency as per the Rayleigh-Jeans law given here. If that is the case, then at infinite frequencies, the energy density is also infinite. But the experimental curves showed that the energy density is zero. This is termed as the ultraviolet catastrophe. This was a serious problem at that time. You can also see the wavelength version of the blackbody radiation like this. Ultimately, we need a correct expression to explain the above behavior, which was not possible with the classical concepts. Coming to the second puzzle is the photoelectric effect, which is nothing but when the ultraviolet light shines on two metal electrodes with a voltage applied across them, the light changes the voltage at which sparking takes place. This relation between light and electricity is the cause of photoelectric effect. Hence, it was concluded that photoelectric effect was due to the interaction between the light and the matter. Also, it was observed that the maximum kinetic energy of the released electrons is proportional to the frequency of the light. My dear friends, this surprised many because according to the wave theory, kinetic energy should depend upon the intensity of the light rather than the frequency of the radiation. But they found an increase in the intensity of light was found to increase the number of electrons released from the metal. Also, no time lag between the incidence of light and the emission of electrons was noticed virtually. All these observations were supposed to be not in favor of the principles of wave theory of light, or in other words, they are against the principles of classical physics. Since both the blackbody radiation and the photoelectric effect are due to the interaction between the light and the matter, a serious relook on the theories of light is advised. Coming to the theories of light, the first known theory and the oldest theories of light is the Newton's corpuscular theory. According to it, the light is composed of very tiny particles called corpuscles. This successfully explained the rectilinear propagation of light, but unfortunately failed to explain the phenomenon of interference, diffraction, polarization, and so on and so forth. Then, in order to explain these phenomena, Huygens put forth his wave theory. Concepts of wavefront and wavelets were introduced, and it successfully explained the rectilinear propagation of light, interference, diffraction, polarization, and so on, but failed to convincingly explain the ultraviolet catastrophe in blackbody radiation and give a proper explanation for the photoelectric effect. In the meantime, during the second part of the 19th century, James Clerk Maxwell proposed that the light wave is an electromagnetic wave which is transverse in nature. This was useful in explaining the polarization phenomenon. By and large, the particle and wave theories were proposed and they were successful to some extent. This was the conclusion we derived from the theories of the light. Classical theory treated light energy as a continuous quantity, but in order to explain the blackbody radiation phenomenon in 1900, Max Planck thought that a total turnaround from the above idea could crack the puzzle of blackbody radiation. He proposed that the energy exchange between the radiation and the matter could be through energy packets similar to particles called quanta. So the atoms in the matter behaves like harmonic oscillators by absorbing the energy packets with the energy related with the frequency of the incident radiation. He gave the formula for energy E is equal to nh nu, where h is the Planck constant, n is the number of oscillators, and nu is the frequency of radiation, where h nu is the quantum of light energy. The above formula reveals the fact that the energy can take only allowed values, or in other words, the quantity energy is quantized. It cannot take arbitrary values. Also, one can say that the energy values are discrete in nature. So the allowed values are h nu, 2h nu, 3h nu. Putting all these together, we can call it as Planck's hypothesis. My dear friends, of course, this opened up many gates. A new kind of philosophy started to exist because of the golden idea of Max Planck. Therefore, Max Planck was considered as the father of quantum mechanics. So his radiation formula is U of nu d nu which is equal to 8 pi by c square h nu by e power h nu by kt minus 1 into nu square d nu. So from this one can find that when nu is large, u of nu tends to 0 because e power h nu by kt minus 1 is very large. So ultimately the expression u of nu goes to 0. From this we say that the experimental and the theoretical results matched. Following the successful explanation of the blackbody radiation in 1902, Philip Lenard demonstrated that electrically charged particles are liberated from a metal surface when it is irradiated, and that these particles are identical to electrons discovered by the J.J. Thomson in the year 1897. So, following this and the Planck's hypothesis, in 1905, Einstein explained the photoelectric effect and derived the following relation, that is h nu, which is equal to phi 0 plus half mv square, where h nu is the quantum of light radiation, which is equal to the work function of the material phi 0 plus the kinetic energy of the photoelectrons. So once this equation is written and successfully explained by Einstein, one can conclude that both the puzzles were successfully cracked. But this is not the end of the road. Questions after questions were raised by many physicists as Planck's idea of particle nature of light could induce further problems as the Newton's corpuscular theory faced. Now, by the idea of Planck, light needs to behave like particles in experiments like blackbody radiation and photoelectric effect. At the same time, in order to successfully explain the phenomenon like interference, diffraction, and polarization, the light needs to act like waves. Therefore, it is natural to ask how the light can act as particle in some situations and a wave in some other situations. But to put an end to this, physicists strongly recommended and put forth the dual nature of light concept. That is, light can act as both particle and wave depending upon the experimental situations. The experimental situations decide the role of light to play in it. Though this looked peculiar, it was the only conclusion possible at that time, and things started to move with these ad hoc principles, which means there is no other go. Still, we have to go a long way to understand the further developments like uncertainty principle, matter waves, Schrodinger equation, and so on and so forth. Friends, we take all of them in our next video. Till then, thank you for your patient listening and learning.